Wir freuen uns sehr, hier in Berlin zu sein. Vielen Dank für Ihre Gastfreundschaft. Thank you very much. Today we are honored to have with us Mr. Wolfgang Schäuble, the President of the Bundestag, and Mr. Olaf Scholz, Vice-Chancellor and Federal Minister of Finance. We greatly appreciate your personal involvement in organization and oversight of this process, and I think it will be a very successful gathering in Berlin. We are also joined by our dear friend, Mr. Guglielmo Picchi, who now serves as Italy's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, who represents today the Italian chairmanship in the OSCE. So we're really glad, Guglielmo, to have you here after serving many years in this assembly. Mr. Picchi is one of the several members of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly who have, unfortunately for us, but thankfully for their countries and themselves, left our assembly to take over governmental duties. Just a few weeks ago, also when our great colleague, Mr. Ignacio Sanchez Amor, was appointed as Spain's Secretary of State for Territorial Policy. Earlier this year, our Special Representative for Arctic Issues, Mr. Ola Elvestuen, became Norway's Minister of Climate and Environment, and Ms. Anna Birchall was appointed Deputy Prime Minister in Romania. I believe this underlines the excellent work and good work we're accomplishing. So, following Mr. Picchi's remarks, you will be able to ask questions to the chairmanship, and there will be a session of questions and answers. And now let me first give the floor to the President of the Bundestag, Mr. Wolfgang Schäuble. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, President, Ministers, dear colleagues, meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren. Es ist mir eine große Freude, Sie im Reichstag, dem Sitz des Deutschen Bundestages, zu Ihrer Jahrestagung begrüßen zu können. Es ist die zweite Tagung Ihrer Versammlung in Berlin. Seien Sie uns herzlich willkommen. Als 1992 die Parlamentarische Versammlung zum ersten Mal in Budapest zusammenkam, war die Welt zwar auch nicht in Ordnung, aber es hatte nach dem Ende der Blockkonfrontation eine Zeit der Hoffnung begonnen. Auf eine Weltordnung, in der Kooperation mehr gilt als Konfrontation, in der sich Frieden, Wohlstand, Demokratie in der OSZE-Region und darüber hinaus ausbreiten, in der Konflikte zwischen Staaten friedlich und auf der Basis gemeinsam vereinbarter Regeln gelöst werden, so wie es die Schlussakte von Helsinki vorgesehen hatte und wie wir es in der Charta von Paris bekräftigt haben. Die Welt schien vernünftiger und sicherer geworden, zumindest ein Stück weit. Trotzdem ist damals niemand auf die Idee gekommen, die KSZE als entbehrlich abzuschaffen. Das hat sich als ein Glück erwiesen, denn die Welt ist in dem vergangenen Vierteljahrhundert leider weder vernünftiger noch sicherer geworden und auch nicht weniger kompliziert. Die zunehmende globale Verflechtung und die sich beschleunigende technologische Entwicklung haben die gegenseitige Abhängigkeit unserer Staaten und Gesellschaften verstärkt, aber sie haben uns eben nicht im selben Maße einander näher gebracht, eher im Gegenteil. Wir erleben gerade, dass Partner sich einander entfremden, dass sie von Werten, Vorstellungen, Verabredungen abrücken, zu denen wir uns alle freiwillig bekannt und verpflichtet haben, dass die europäische Friedensordnung und die territoriale Integrität souveräner Staaten, das ist das politische Kernstück des KSZE-Prozesses gewesen, und es ist es, dass sie nicht mehr uneingeschränkt akzeptiert werden. Das Vertrauen erodiert zwischen unseren Staaten, aber eben auch innerhalb unserer Gesellschaften, weil die Politik in den Augen vieler Menschen Glaubwürdigkeit und Lösungskompetenz eingebüßt hat. Die Lage ist komplex, die Staatengemeinschaft ist heterogener geworden, die Interessen noch vielfältiger, alte Gewissheiten lösen sich auf. Neue Risiken und Herausforderungen sind hinzugekommen, die unser aller Sicherheit betreffen. Der fortschreitende Klimawandel, hybride Bedrohungen, Cyberattacken, internationaler Terrorismus, multidimensionale Kriege und Konflikte, zerfallende Staaten und nicht zuletzt Migrationsströme, so groß wie seit dem Ende des Zweiten Weltkriegs nicht mehr. Es sollte auf der Hand liegen, dass diese Probleme in nationalen Alleingängen nicht zu bewältigen sind. Und doch beobachten wir Tendenzen der Abkehr von internationalen Regelsystemen, von multinationaler Zusammenarbeit, von der Bereitschaft zu Kompromiss und Konsens. Und demgegenüber breitet sich die fatale Überzeugung aus, es könne immer nur einen Gewinner geben, wieder besseren Wissens und entgegen aller historischen Erfahrung. Während der Bedarf nach globaler Ordnung wächst, verlieren die zu diesem Zweck geschaffenen transnationalen Institutionen und Gremien an Handlungsfähigkeit. Dass es den Regierungen der OSZE-Staaten seit 2003 nicht gelungen ist, sich auf eine von allen getragene Abschlusserklärung zu einigen, kann man zwar die Gründe im Einzelnen nachvollziehen, aber befriedigen kann das niemanden von uns. Trotz der bestehenden Differenzen, der wechselseitigen Blockaden, der ungelösten Dauerkonflikte, eine multilaterale Organisation wie die OSZE ist unverzichtbar, vielleicht heute sogar mehr denn je. Das dichte Netz an eingespielten Verfahren, gewachsenen Institutionen, erprobten Gesprächsforen, die Präsenz vor Ort mit unabhängigen Beobachtermissionen, die von allen Parteien anerkannt werden, die einzigartige Erfahrung im Krisen- und Konfliktmanagement. Die militärische Eskalation in der Ukraine hat uns das deutlich vor Augen geführt. Auch wenn die Umsetzung des Minsker Abkommens noch immer nicht zufriedenstellen kann, wie wäre es um diesen Konflikt mitten in Europa bestellt, wenn es die OSZE nicht gäbe? Die Spannungen und Meinungsverschiedenheiten machen auch vor dieser Versammlung nicht Halt. Auch nicht vor der Wahlbeobachtung, was ja eine der Kernkompetenzen der Parlamentarischen Versammlung der OSZE ist. Ihre Expertise aus über 130 beobachteten Wahlen seit 1993 ist unbestritten. Als eine Form gegenseitiger Kontrolle zeigen die Wahlbeobachtungsmissionen Defizite auf und vor allem stiften sie Vertrauen in den demokratischen Prozess. Aber die Funktion kann Wahlbeobachtung nur erfüllen, wenn die grundlegende Voraussetzung von allen Beteiligten akzeptiert wird, die Unabhängigkeit der Beobachtermission. Und das schließt, dazu gibt es aktuellen Anlass, das zu betonen, die personelle Zusammensetzung und den freien Zugang aller Wahlbeobachter ein. Im Übrigen sind gerade in Zeiten zunehmender Spannung gemeinsam getroffene Vereinbarungen ein Wert an sich und sie sollten eben nicht leichtfertig zur Disposition gestellt werden. Ich bin überzeugt, dass die parlamentarische Dimension der OSZE vor dem Hintergrund verhärteter Fronten und gegenseitigen Misstrauens an Bedeutung sogar noch gewinnen wird. ja gewinnen muss. Es kann hier gelingen, Gesprächsfäden zu erhalten oder neu zu knüpfen, gerade auch wenn Regierungen feststecken. In der informellen Begegnung zwischen Abgeordneten. Die Parlamentarische Versammlung ist so gesehen eine dauernde Übung im Verständnis für die Perspektive des anderen, ohne die es keine vernünftige Außenpolitik geben kann. Es hilft immer, die unterschiedlichen Wahrnehmungen zu kennen, die in unterschiedlichen Erfahrungen und Traditionen, auch in unseren unterschiedlichen Vergangenheiten wurzeln. Selbst wenn am Ende noch kein Konsens hergestellt werden kann. Es hilft Vertrauen herstellen. Und das Reden ist dafür mindestens so wichtig wie die gegenseitige Kontrolle durch Wahlbeobachtung. Vertrauen entsteht nicht zwischen Staaten. Es entsteht immer zuerst zwischen Menschen, die bereit sind, einander zuzuhören, miteinander zu debattieren, das Trennende zu respektieren und dennoch das Gemeinsame zu suchen. Und hier liegt die Antwort auf die gelegentlich gestellte Frage, wozu solche parlamentarische Treffen nützlich sind. Die Rolle der Parlamente bei der Umsetzung der OSZE-Verpflichtungen. Das Thema Ihrer Jahrestagung, Herr Präsident, ist gut gewählt. Ich will Ihren Beratungen natürlich nicht vorgreifen, aber lassen Sie mich 2 Punkte erwähnen, die mir besonders wichtig scheinen. Ein Parlament ist kein Parlament, wenn es der Regierung nicht kritisch auf die Finger schaut. Ich war lange Regierungsmitglied, dass ich weiß, auch wenn es nicht immer nett ist, aber es muss sein. Die aufmerksame parlamentarische Begleitung brauchen im Übrigen nicht nur unsere nationalen Regierungen, auch die OSZE insgesamt braucht sie. Und deshalb ist es gute Tradition, dass sich der OSZE-Vorsitz hier ihren Fragen zu stellen hat. Und zum anderen leisten Sie, wo es nötig ist, Überzeugungsarbeit für die Zusammenarbeit unserer Staaten gegenüber ihren Regierungen, gegenüber den Kollegen in ihren Parlamenten und mindestens ebenso wichtig gegenüber ihren Wählerinnen und Wählern. Es wäre schon einiges gewonnen, wenn mehr Menschen in unseren Ländern dem Versprechen auf schnelle, einfache Lösungen durch Abschottung misstrauen würden, auf ein Prinzip, das ja am Ende auf die Dominanz des Stärkeren in den zwischenstaatlichen Beziehungen setzt. Als ich 1972, so lange ist es her, zum ersten Mal in den Deutschen Bundestag gewählt wurde, hatte in Helsinki gerade die erste Vorbereitungskonferenz der KSZE begonnen. Die Idee war, Frieden und Wohlstand durch Vertrauen und Kooperation über die Systemgrenzen hinweg zu fördern. Die Idee war wegweisend und sie war erfolgreich. Und wir Deutschen haben ihr besonders viel zu verdanken. Unweit von hier verlief die Deutschland und Europa teilende Grenzlinie, an der sich zwei Staatenblöcke hochgerüstet und unversöhnlich gegenüberstanden. Und mit dem KSZE-Prozess hat die Überwindung der Spaltung Europas begonnen und er hat die Voraussetzungen für die deutsche Einheit geschaffen. Das war zwar die Hoffnung der damaligen Politik in der Bundesrepublik Deutschland, aber Garantien gab es nicht. Der langjährige Außenminister Hans-Dietrich Genscher hat 1975 vor dem Bundestag für die KSZE-Schlussakte mit einer Mahnung geworben: Jeder sollte das Erreichte am Machbaren messen und sich, ich zitiere ihn, nicht durch das Ideal Wünschenswerte den Blick für das heute Mögliche verstellen lassen. Diesen Blick für das Realistische brauchen wir auch heute. Wir haben von der Wirklichkeit auszugehen. Und wir brauchen den Ehrgeiz, den Willen und die Beharrlichkeit, das real Mögliche auch zu erreichen, ohne das Wünschenswerte aus den Augen zu verlieren. In diesem Sinne wünsche ich Ihnen in den kommenden Tagen konstruktive Debatten und Ihren Beratungen viel Erfolg.
Thank you, President Schäuble. I think we all appreciate your very insightful remarks here. And once again, thank you, you and your team, for hosting us in this historical building, Reichstag. Mr. President, Mr. Vice-Chancellor, Deputy Foreign Minister, fellow parliamentarians, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this year's annual session is implementing OSCE commitments, the role of parliaments. And this theme speaks to the question of how parliamentarians can promote full adherence to OSCE principles such as sovereign equality, territorial integrity of states, and the peaceful settlement of disputes. As members of parliament, what we can do to promote respect for the inviolability of frontiers and human rights, and the fulfillment in good faith of obligations under international law. These principles, found in the Helsinki Final Act and other OSCE documents, are some of the most important international commitments that exist. But we must admit that this state of implementation is not where it should be. Unfortunately, many of these principles are breached with disturbing regularity. Human rights and fundamental freedoms are violated. Territorial integrity is disrespected. International law is ignored, and the use of force is threatened. And the Speaker also mentioned those problems. Ongoing violations of these principles are the main grounds for our disagreements with OSCE countries that fail to live up their commitments. Everyone in the OSCE should understand that if they violate principles, they will receive our attention and, of course, response. After all, that is what we are doing and we have to do here to hold each other to account. I'm pleased to see such a large delegations here in Berlin from many countries from across North America, Europe and Central Asia, as well as our Mediterranean partners. This is a strong sign of our good cooperation and commitment to dialogue. In recent months, we have seen too little dialogue and too much brinkmanship, where governments ratchet up tensions and take us to the brink of war. Protracted conflicts also continue to plague the OSCE area, and this crisis in and around Ukraine continues to claim lives and threaten the stability of Europe. In May, I led a delegation with my colleagues to Ukraine, including Donbas region. We met with internally displaced people living in the conflict zone. We saw up close the devastation caused by this conflict. In reality, everybody in Donbas has become a casualty of war, and there is no reason for the continued humanitarian tragedy there. We will debate this issue, of course, once again here in Berlin, and I hope for strong and constructive dialogue that will contribute in a real way to resolving this crisis in accordance with international law and respect for Ukraine's territorial integrity. In my own country of Georgia, more than 300,000 people are displaced by conflicts and occupation. This August, this year, will mark 10 years since 2008 war in Georgia, and unfortunately, the problem is still there. The conflict between Russia and Georgia remains unresolved. So when we talk about implementation of commitments, we must realize that this has real humanitarian consequences. Dear colleagues, the last time that the OSCE gathered in the Reichstag in 2002, OSCE parliamentarians in a single voice condemned acts of extremist violence and terrorism. Sadly, terrorism remains a fact of life of many of our countries, and we must remain steadfast in our efforts to counter the scourge of our time. This issue will be one of the main topics of debate at this annual session. Also high on our agenda here in Berlin, once again, is the migration crisis. And in recent years, we have seen the impact of waves of refugees and migrants on Europe, with countries handling the challenge with varying degrees of respect for humanitarian principles. Germany, to its credit, has been one of the leaders in taking in refugees based on commitments under international law. The recent political dispute in Germany over migration threatened even to destabilize the government, but was quickly resolved. The rapid negotiations that took place remind us that there are always areas of common ground and that compromise can be reached in the interest of stability. And it's really a very good example. Recently, though, we have seen these principles put to the test, reminding us that the migration crisis is a global crisis. The situation on the US-Mexico border has drawn the attention of the world. While border security is important, we all agree with this, it should not result in separating families or traumatizing children. Closely related to the migration crisis is climate change. With extreme weather on the rise, we must step up our efforts before it's not too late. Parliamentarians can promote this process by expanding universal ratification of Paris Agreement, raising public awareness, and enhancing parliamentary oversight on governments, including in the economic and environmental dimension. Dear colleagues, in times when democratic principles are challenged, we must focus on building the resilience of democratic states and promote the consolidation of the rule of law. This is a message I have repeated with leaders from the Western Balkans, where we must redouble efforts to implement reforms, modernize judicial systems, and fight corruption, and when and where the OSCE must continue to provide expertise and help. This also means expanding opportunities for women in public life, including promoting their participation in conflict prevention and resolution. And I'm very much pleased that several of OSCE recent election observation missions have been led by women. By the way, complex, sensitive, not easy process. These missions have been politically challenging, but we have produced strong and balanced assessments which have once again demonstrated the credibility of this organization. To continue building the OSCE's credibility, it's necessary to develop better tools and take concrete steps to enhance the organization's effectiveness and efficiency. In this regard, I strongly support OSCE Secretary General's agenda of making the OSCE fit for purpose. And these are also worthwhile reform ideas that we in the Parliamentary Assembly exploring within the parliamentary in our circles to make our work more effective. I also welcome the good cooperation we have had with the Italian chairmanship, with whom we have developed strong synergy which reinforces our impact, and we're looking forward to work closely also with Guglielmo Picchi. Fellow parliamentarians, last month I traveled to Moldova to welcome achievements in the Transnistrian settlement process. Chisinau and Tiraspol are in fact setting a very positive example for the rest of the OSCE area. The local ownership and political courage that have led to real advances in the settlement demonstrate that dialogue and persistence are the way forward. While we have seen encouraging steps on the regional level, we need to see stronger political will on a much larger scale throughout the OSCE area. If we hope to resolve the challenges of our time and finally implement the commitments that our governments agreed for 4 decades ago in the Helsinki Final Act. As members of parliament, you and I have substantial influence on decision makers in our governments. As representatives of the people, we are in a powerful and unique position to help build political will. This is what we must keep in mind as we discuss how to better implement OSCE commitments. As the former German Chancellor Helmut Kohl once said, where there is no will, no rules or laws can help. My dear friends, meeting here in Berlin reminds us both of Europe's darkest days and its brightest hopes. I remember myself being in the city in March of 1989 and how I never imagined at that time that by the end of the year, the Berlin Wall would start to come down. None of us will ever forget the feeling when we had in late 1999, when crowds of East Germans started climbing onto the wall and were joined by West Germans on the other side in one of the great celebrations of human history. That moment was an inspiration for everyone around the world who earned the freedom. It reminded us that what may seem permanent or insurmountable is not permanent or insurmountable at all. Things can change overnight when there is the will. We should all keep this lesson in mind that we work in the coming days in adopting a very strong Berlin Declaration that can serve as powerful guidance to our governments and the international community. I thank once again the German Bundestag, the German government, and the German people for their hospitality. Of course, once again, our colleagues here in this parliament, led by Doris Barnett, and the people on the right side or left side, the people who did a great job to organize this event. And thank you, my dear colleagues, all of you, for being here today. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to invite Mr. Olaf Scholz, the Vice-Chancellor, Federal Minister of Finance of Germany, to deliver his address. Please, the floor is yours, sir.
Dear Mr. President of the German Bundestag, dear Mr. President of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, dear Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Italy, dear members of the Diplomatic Corps, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor to welcome you all to Berlin. Here in Berlin, we can see the merits of the OSCE and its predecessor. The CSCE played an important role in the events in Europe that led to the fall of the Berlin Wall. In November 1989, people from both parts of Berlin danced on the wall between this Reichstag building and the Brandenburg Gate. Since then, Berlin has become one big city, and it has become difficult for visitors to figure out whether they are in the former eastern or western part. As much as the divided city of Berlin was a symbol of the Cold War, this reunified city has become a symbol of the most peaceful period in many parts of Europe for many decades now. That is why I'm happy that this conference is taking place in Berlin, and in particular in this building, which itself has played a key role in modern German history. A fire deliberately started in the Reichstag in February 1933 was used by the Nazis as a pretext to suspend the constitution and strip the German parliament of its powers. We all know where this led. Ladies and gentlemen, this historic location should remind us of the values of democracy, peace, and international cooperation, the values the OSCE stands for. After the end of the Cold War, the OSCE Charter of Paris for a New Europe reflected the new hope for peace and security cooperation across the entire area encompassed by the OSCE. Never before had a region spanning 3 continents and 57 countries shared the same approach towards comprehensive security. This is an approach that goes far beyond the purely military aspects of security and also covers aspects like economic stability and individual security grounded in democracy and human rights. Today, it also encompasses new transnational challenges, such as large migration flows and the fight against terrorism, organized crime, cyber attacks, and violent extremism. The OSCE has defined common principles and commitments that everyone has agreed to respect and abide by. Unfortunately, these days, our rules-based system is being challenged on multiple fronts. Broken trust has strained relations among key stakeholders. This may result in rising tensions and increasingly hostile rhetoric. These dynamics of confrontation intensify the risk of conflict or a process of renationalization. Skepticism about the merits of multilateralism and international cooperation is gaining a stronger foothold. And ironically, this skepticism is particularly pronounced among people living in countries which have taken great benefits from multilateralism and cooperation in recent decades in terms of both security and economic growth. Many people perceive a loss of control over both their personal future and political developments. This sense of uncertainty leads some people to believe in parties and politicians who promise that confrontational and purely national politics are the solution to today's challenges. But gambling for majorities by proposing seemingly easy solutions that have negative effects on others does not solve problems. Fear-mongering and the fueling of prejudice divide our societies and alienate states and regions. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot allow this skepticism to prevail. We must keep striving to preserve regional security and stability. There is no viable alternative to cooperative and multilateral approaches as we all, even the bigger states, face challenges that cannot be solved by one state alone. Unfortunately, many persistent armed conflicts confirm this assessment. We must do our utmost to prevent any further disintegration of the international order, in particular in the OSCE area. Stand still or no action motions are not an option. Difficulties can never justify political inertia. We must oppose unilateralist trends and uphold what we believe is a better solution, a pluralistic society based on democratic principles and the rule of law. The OSCE's participating states have recognized these principles by way of commitment, and it is our duty as governments and parliaments to live these commitments by entering into open dialogue and by expressing a genuine willingness to cooperate. I'm convinced that comprehensive and cooperative security offers the best prospects for a safer future for us all. We have a set of accepted rules to lead this discussion, and this annual meeting of the members of parliament in the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly is certainly the right forum for such debate. Ladies and gentlemen, what are the key issues that need to be discussed? Above all, in the politico-military dimension, we have to make full use of the structured dialogue of the OSCE established by consensus at the Hamburg Ministerial Council in 2016. This forum has become an essential element of the OSCE. We must take this opportunity to address pertinent questions, and we need a new start for conventional arms control and confidence and security building measures in the OSCE area. You can play a very important role by lending your support to the structured dialogue and asking your governments to strive for tangible results in this common endeavor in order to safeguard cooperative security in Europe. The OSCE not only provides an indispensable platform for dialogue, it also plays an important role in implementing security policies on the ground. Germany works particularly closely with the OSCE in strengthening the control of small arms and light weapons in southeastern Europe and along the EU border with Ukraine. Another good example of concrete action taken by the OSCE is its work to fight terrorism and violent extremism. Germany has become one of the major donors to these projects. The challenge here is to act efficiently while at the same time safeguarding human rights and the rule of law. Equally concrete is the work we have launched during Germany's chairmanship in the economic and environmental dimensions under the heading Connectivity. Trade facilitation and trans-regional transport links, together with secure and sustainable energy supplies and energy efficiency, are a key basis for growth and stability in our countries. Ladies and gentlemen, in certain parts of the OSCE area, we have witnessed attempts to redraw internationally recognized borders by force. Also, protracted conflicts have endangered the security of certain regions and their inhabitants. In many regions, OSCE countries are working to build peace and resolve conflicts. It is important that all the countries involved take responsibility for the regions. The OSCE can exploit its full deconflicting potential and thus pave the way for economic development only if all sides demonstrate the political will to resolve the conflict. Maintaining a protracted conflict may promise to bring easy strategic gains in short term. But from a long-term perspective, this is a lose-lose situation. Instability is contagious, and no country should expect to be immune. And everyone involved needs to be aware that the resources spent on maintaining a conflict cannot be invested in more important things, such as education, economic prosperity, and development. Once again, the Parliamentary Assembly is gathering against the backdrop of a serious security crisis in Europe caused by Russia's illegal and unrecognized annexation of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol. Another great obstacle to restoring trust is the crisis in and around Ukraine. After more than 4 years of fighting, military logic still prevails. The welfare of the people in the conflict zone appears to have dropped out of the equation. Germany is working with France, Russia, and Ukraine in the Normandy format to achieve progress on the implementation of the Minsk agreements. Both sides must abide by the commitments they have subscribed to. Wherever common ground is not in sight, the first step toward pragmatic cooperation is dialogue. The OSCE's history is the best example of how to set up a dialogue across ideological differences. Berlin and the Reichstag building remind us of its success. The OSCE Parliamentary Assembly is a key forum for dialogue and constructive debate. For this reason, I'm confident that your annual meeting will continue this tradition, and I wish you a fruitful and productive session. Thank you.
Onorevole Presidente Schäuble, Vice Cancelliere Scholz, mio amico Presidente Tsereteli, sono lieto di intervenire oggi alla sessione annuale dell'Assemblea parlamentare dell'OSCE. È un onore e un'emozione essere qui in rappresentanza della Presidenza italiana e essere qui con voi è veramente una grande gioia. Sono stato 10 anni membro di questa Assemblea, ho condiviso tanti momenti, tanti monitoraggi elettorali in tante parti del mondo, da Vancouver a Vladivostok. Ringrazio il Bundestag, il Presidente Schäuble per l'ospitalità, il Governo federale e naturalmente il Presidente Tsereteli per l'invito che ha rivolto all'Assemblea, alla Presidenza italiana per essere qui. Dialogo, ownership e responsabilità è il motto della Presidenza italiana. Sono 3 linee direttrici, 3 binari che riteniamo fondamentali per il presente e il futuro della nostra organizzazione. E sono 3 impegni a cui l'Assemblea parlamentare contribuisce in maniera determinante grazie al contributo di ciascuno di voi. La diplomazia parlamentare svolge infatti un ruolo fondamentale nel favorire il dialogo inclusivo anche sui temi più delicati, su cui possono essere visioni divergenti, favorendo un avvicinamento delle posizioni. Con i lavori dei suoi comitati, l'Assemblea contribuisce a rafforzare l'ownership degli Stati nel tracciare le priorità che l'organizzazione è chiamata a perseguire. E l'Assemblea custodisce e rinnova quel senso di condivisione responsabile del patrimonio di pace e sicurezza che insieme abbiamo costruito nei 43 anni di vita della nostra organizzazione. Un senso di responsabilità che ha radici profonde e che ci consente di guardare avanti alle nuove sfide collettive che ci pone uno scenario globale sempre più complesso. Il dibattito che la vostra Assemblea svolgerà in questi giorni, secondo l'articolato programma dei lavori incentrati sulle priorità tematiche dell'agenda OSCE, sarà un valore aggiunto per la Presidenza italiana e ci fornirà orientamenti essenziali per proseguire la nostra azione nei prossimi mesi in preparazione del Consiglio ministeriale di Milano del 6 e 7 dicembre. Come sapete, la Presidenza italiana ha tra le sue priorità la ricerca di una soluzione stabile e duratura alla crisi in e intorno all'Ucraina, attraverso la piena applicazione degli accordi di Minsk e il sostegno all'attività della missione speciale di monitoraggio, i cui osservatori devono essere messi in condizione di operare in sicurezza e poter svolgere con efficacia il loro mandato. I dati riportati dalla missione OSCE destano tuttavia preoccupazione. Le vittime fra i civili sono in aumento e il numero di sfollati e rifugiati continua a crescere. Si registra inoltre un inasprimento delle ostilità e delle violenze causate dal dispiegamento di armi pesanti che avrebbero dovuto essere già state ritirate. Preoccupa inoltre le minacce sempre più gravi alla sicurezza degli osservatori OSCE e gli attacchi ai dispositivi in dotazioni quali i droni di lungo raggio. Occorre un rinnovato impegno per migliorare la situazione. Dobbiamo ascoltare l'appello della popolazione civile che da entrambi i lati della linea di contatto chiede di tornare a vivere in pace. Tutte le parti devono assumersi le responsabilità, e ripeto tutte le parti, per attuare un pieno rispetto del cessate il fuoco e il convinto rilancio del processo politico di soluzione della crisi in seno al gruppo trilaterale di contatto e al formato Normandia. Allo stesso modo dobbiamo intensificare i nostri sforzi per la soluzione dei conflitti protratti. Sono confortato dalla recente positiva dinamica del processo in Transnistria che l'Italia ha sostenuto attivamente, contribuendo a ulteriori significativi avanzamenti sanciti dall'incontro del formato 5+2 tenutesi a Roma alla fine di maggio e concluso con la firma del protocollo di Roma che ribadisce l'impegno a finalizzare entro quest'anno le priorità delineate negli anni scorsi sotto la presidenza tedesca e austriaca. Continuiamo inoltre a lavorare per una soluzione pacifica del conflitto in Nagorno-Karabakh attraverso il pieno sostegno ai copresidenti del gruppo di Minsk, nonché incoraggiando contatti diretti al massimo livello fra le parti. Sosteniamo le discussioni internazionali di Ginevra e il loro rilancio per una soluzione del conflitto in Georgia, rivolgendo particolare attenzione al problema degli sfollati interni. Onorevoli Presidenti, cari colleghi, l'Italia ritiene che il futuro dell'OSCE passi anche attraverso un approfondimento della collaborazione con i Paesi partner e con le altre organizzazioni internazionali, a cominciare dall'Unione Europea, con cui proprio pochi giorni fa è stato concluso uno scambio di lettere per il rafforzamento della cooperazione con l'OSCE, che salutiamo con viva soddisfazione. Unione Europea e OSCE devono unire in maniera sinergica i loro sforzi, in particolare sul Mediterraneo. La Presidenza italiana ha sin dal suo inizio posto al centro della propria agenda la dimensione mediterranea, nella convinzione che la sicurezza euro-mediterranea è indivisibile e complementare rispetto a quella euroasiatica. Per questo riteniamo fondamentale rafforzare la collaborazione con i nostri Paesi partner mediterranei e asiatici dell'OSCE, con cui vogliamo dialogare sempre di più per affrontare le sfide comuni, compresa quella di un'ordinata gestione dei flussi migratori. La crisi migratoria è irrisolvibile senza la più ampia condivisione di responsabilità e di solidarietà a livello internazionale. Come sappiamo, è un fenomeno strutturale destinato a durare per molti anni e che potrà essere gestito soltanto attraverso un approccio multilaterale. La partita della sicurezza è globale. Abbiamo bisogno di saper guardare oltre i confini della nostra organizzazione per affrontare con successo minacce transnazionali come il terrorismo, gli attacchi cibernetici, la corruzione, la criminalità organizzata, i traffici illeciti. Sfide che si ripercuotono non soltanto sui rapporti internazionali, ma sulla sicurezza e il benessere delle nostre società. Per questo la nostra Presidenza ha ospitato lo scorso 10 e 11 maggio la conferenza contro il terrorismo incentrata sul fenomeno del foreign fighters di ritorno. E sempre a Roma a settembre ospiteremo una conferenza sulla cyber security. Su questi temi trasversali l'OSCE deve puntare per rafforzare il consenso e la comunione di intento tra Stati partecipanti. La Presidenza italiana e l'Assemblea parlamentare condividono l'impegno a rafforzare tutte e tre le dimensioni su cui si fonda il concetto di sicurezza omnicomprensiva della nostra organizzazione. Nella dimensione politico-militare intendiamo riaffermare gli strumenti di sicurezza cooperativa per ridurre al minimo i rischi di fraintendimenti, alimentando fiducia, trasparenza, prevedibilità e moderazione. Vogliamo promuovere la prosecuzione del dialogo strutturato sulle sfide attuali e future della sicurezza europea. Un esercizio prezioso ed unico nel suo genere che ha già dato prova di risultati importanti a partire dalla riconosciuta necessità di impostare i nostri scambi su basi più concrete, meno ideologiche e di affrontare con rinnovato impegno le sfide della nostra sicurezza collettiva in ambito politico-militare, mantenendo saldi i nostri principi e fermi i nostri impegni. Anche la dimensione economico-ambientale è al centro della nostra Presidenza. La nostra azione mira a rafforzare il dialogo su crescita, innovazione, capitale umano, buon governo e transizione energetica verde, temi ai quali sarà dedicata la 26ª edizione del Foro economico e ambientale in programma a Praga dal 5 al 7 di settembre. Desidero inoltre sottolineare la grande importanza che riveste per la Presidenza italiana il tema della lotta alla corruzione. In questo ambito sarà ospitata a Roma nel mese di novembre una conferenza internazionale che offrirà un'opportunità di confronto e scambio ad altissimo livello su buone pratiche e prospettiva della lotta alla corruzione dell'area OSCE. La dimensione umana rappresenta un pilastro fondamentale della nostra architettura di sicurezza. La nostra sicurezza non può prescindere dal rispetto dei diritti umani, delle libertà fondamentali e dello Stato di diritto. Siamo impegnati a promuovere una riflessione comune sul rafforzamento della cooperazione all'interno dell'area OSCE per il contrasto al traffico di esseri umani e la prevenzione della tratta, con una specifica attenzione per tutti coloro che sono più vulnerabili, donne, bambini e minori non accompagnati. Stiamo poi dedicando intensi sforzi al contrasto di ogni forma di razzismo, xenofobia, discriminazione e intolleranza. questo riguardo ricordo che la Presidenza italiana si è aperta con la conferenza internazionale sulla lotta all'antisemitismo nell'area OSCE, che abbiamo ospitato a Roma il 29 gennaio di quest'anno. Proseguiremo questo impegno organizzando nel mese di ottobre, sempre a Roma, una conferenza sulla lotta ad ogni forma di intolleranza e discriminazione, anche su base religiosa. In sintesi, vado verso la conclusione, l'Italia intende fare e sta facendo il massimo per contribuire come Presidenza in esercizio all'azione dell'OSCE. La nostra azione dovrà essere ispirata a una visione positiva ma pragmatica e avere un orizzonte e un respiro di lungo periodo, per ispirare e guidare le nostre azioni, per ridurre le tensioni attraverso il dialogo, ricorrendo a tutti gli strumenti e i mezzi della sicurezza cooperativa e riscoprendo i legami di civiltà che uniscono i 57 Paesi che fanno parte dell'OSCE, nonostante siano Paesi differenti e abbiano sensibilità differenti. Svilupperemo ogni sforzo con la massima determinazione per portare avanti questa visione. Il nostro auspicio è che nel rispetto dei ruoli la collaborazione con l'Assemblea parlamentare possa assicurare sinergia e convergenza per rafforzare il nostro comune impegno per garantire la stabilità e la sicurezza nell'area OSCE. E vi faccio un ultimo appello per cui ciascuno di voi, qualunque ruolo abbia nel proprio Paese, sensibilizzi il proprio governo, la propria opinione pubblica a conoscere cosa fa l'Organizzazione per la sicurezza e cooperazione in Europa, perché facendo conoscere la nostra organizzazione presso le nostre opinioni pubbliche potremo fare un ottimo servizio alla pace e alla sicurezza europea. Vi ringrazio e auguro a tutti buon lavoro.
Grazie, caro Guglielmo, my dear friend, for your very interesting and important remarks. We have seen over the past 6 months that many of priority topics of your chairmanship are also issues of particular interest in the OSCE PA and our Parliamentary Assembly. I appreciated the openness of Italian chairmanship, be cooperating closely with the parliamentarians, with the Parliamentary Assembly, with our Secretariat. Roberto Montella is always very keen to strengthen the ties, and we're working together. And I look forward to continuing our work with you, with the Minister, with the Chairman in office, with your colleagues here, ambassadors, for the remainder of your chairmanship and best outcome as possible. So, dear colleagues, we'll now take a very short break before we proceed with the questions and answers session. And once again, dear friends and colleagues, please join me in thanking President Schäuble, Vice-Chancellor Scholz, and all the German team for joining us today and for hosting us in Berlin. Thank you. We'll be happy if you stay, but we know that there are protocol issues and you have a lot of things to do. Thanks. No, you are staying, colleagues. You're not leaving the hall. We will just transform a little bit podium and start questions and answers session with the State Secretary of Italy, Chairman in office.
Yes.
Yeah, facciamo le questions and answers. Ce ne sarà qualcuno più anche.
Yeah, but it has to be like that. But it has to be like that. See, there's no room for it. Sorry. And then please.
Ciao.
Okay. Could you all look in the camera for 1 second?
Press that one.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
One.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, dear friends, colleagues, please go back to your seats, and we'll start now question and answer session with Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Italy, representing its chairman in office, Mr. Guglielmo Picchi. Before we proceed with our question and answer session, let me give some brief instructions regarding the use of microphones in the plenary room. It's very sophisticated equipment here, so I know that you are very advanced also, but some tips. When you wish to speak, please press micro. There's a micro, the specific button in front of you. The light will start flashing, but please be aware that your microphone is not on at this stage. Once the light stops flashing, it's quite complicated. Light stops flashing, your microphone is on, and you can start then speaking. Please press the micro button a second time to switch the microphone off. It's clear. Sorry for this clarification. Members seated in the back rows will use a roving microphone. This will be brought to your place by a member of staff when you are calling to speak. It's also important to know. And when speaking, it would be helpful if members could raise the microphone and stand. This will make you much more prominent, visible on the TV screens. So we currently have, and we announced it already, and the list of speakers is closed now for questions, and you always can send in written form. It's also the part of our procedure. We have 4 questions. So I would like to start with the first speaker, first question. It will be Mr. Francesco Sorbara from Canada. Please, floor is yours, sir.
Excuse me. Мне сказали, что еще этот Азай Гулеев хочет записаться.
Is it working? Now it's working? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Fellow parliamentarians, I would like to take this opportunity to speak about the importance of international trade and the ways in which it contributes to improved security, which is a key goal of the OSCE participating states. Canada is a trading nation and has free trade agreements with countries in various parts of the world. Notable among these, of course, is the Canada-European Union Comprehensive Economic CETA. Recently, we signed on to and allowed for over 9,000 products to become tariff-free. We've already seen the benefits of CETA with, for example, trade between Canada and Italy since provisional application, increasing nearly 10%. According to data available in spring 2018, Canada's merchandise trade with the world in 2017 totaled $1.1 trillion, approximately $547 billion in exports and just over $561 billion in imports. Importantly, with Europe, trade continues to grow, and in 2017 was valued at approximately $108 billion, comprising almost $42 billion in Canadian exports and more than $66 billion in imports from Europe. I believe that, to varying degrees, the OSCE participating states realize that trade agreements can lead to higher growth and enhanced security and good jobs for middle-class workers in both Canada and the European Union. Trade is a tool for improved outcomes in both of these areas. I would urge OSCE parliamentarians, as decision makers for those we represent, to focus on trade as a contributor to more and better security. In that context, I would like to pose a question to OSCE Chairman in Office. Deputy Minister Picchi, recognizing the contribution that free and fair trade can make to economic growth, prosperity and security, will the Italian chairmanship encourage OSCE participating states to pursue stronger trade relations, including through agreements like the Canada-European Union Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement? Grazie per sua attenzione.
Thank you very much. I also would like to ask other speakers that we have question and answer sessions. There might be of introductions, but not statements. It should be question. So thank you very much for putting forward that question now. Another speaker, we will collect now the questions. Nahima Landry from Belgium. Nahima, please. No. No.
Thank you, Mr. President. The OSCE has been rather slow to really engage with the issue of migration. which we all know as one of the most important issues on our political agendas. What can the Italian chairmanship do to adjust the structures of OSCE to make sure that the organization can effectively engage with migration issues? In particular, do you agree with the recommendation that the Parliamentary Assembly has made to have a high-level office in the OSCE to focus on migration? And if you do, what will be the next steps you will undertake to realize this recommendation? Thank you.
Thank you, Nahima. Then, again, Canada, Percy Down, please, Mr. Down.
Colleagues, thank you very much. I continue to be concerned about the follow-up to the work that is done at the OSCE Parliamentary Association. I'll sit down. That's better. I continue to be concerned about the follow-up to the work that is done at the OSCE Parliamentary Association. The resolutions go to the Ministerial Council for presentation. I'm interested in the follow-up. For example, the NATO Parliamentary Association, the Secretary General reports back to the Parliamentary Association about those discussions, what happened to the resolutions, what were found favor and what were opposed and why. I'm wondering if we could have a similar follow-up from the Italian chairmanship to what happens here over the next 3 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, I'd like to remind you that the speakers list closed, and please keep in mind, finish. So there will be Mr. Roger, where's Roger Wicker?
Christmas.
So, Chris, you will ask questions? Okay. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. And again, as I said yesterday at the Standing Committee, thank you for your extraordinary leadership, your 2 visits to Ukraine, which I think were extraordinarily important. Let me just say thank you to our German hosts for their hospitality. The friendship that exists between Germany and the United States is very, very special. I think the President of the Bundestag, Mr. Schäuble, made a very good point that the OSCE is indispensable. Where would we be without it? Not only is the set of principles mutually agreed upon, but even more importantly, I think, are the relationships that are developed. We would be far worse off without the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly and the OSCE itself. We did have a bilateral yesterday with Mr. Tolstoy and the Russians, and I want to tell my colleagues it was a very robust, frank exchange between both nations. And I think, we focused, everything was on the table. We focused on a number of things, including, obviously, the Ukraine, Syria, our hope that the Minsk agreements would be faithfully and aggressively implemented. Deployment of UN peacekeepers, I think, would be one way of trying to mitigate the violence. We brought up Syria. We brought up Boris Nemtsov. His daughter at 12:30 will be meeting for a side event in room 6, and I urge my colleagues to come and hear her, the daughter of slain opposition party Boris Nemtsov. And this would be my question, as the special representative for human trafficking, I would ask, there's a disturbing trend in many parts of the world. Victim identification is down in the OSCE space, in the world. There were 100,000 victims identified last year, and many of those, mostly women, were assisted. It is actually down in Europe last year, and prosecutions have declined as well. 2 very disturbing trends, and I would encourage and ask the chair in office, the Italian leader, if he could speak to that. And also at the meeting that was held in 2017, the ministerial, there was an agreement to do what the UK, what we do, and that is to have sex registries of people who have been convicted of crimes against children, for example. We passed a law, and I was the author of it, called the International Megan's Law. And that law, and we put it into a supplemental last year, made clear that when these people are out of prison and they travel, there is a very high propensity to recommit these crimes in secrecy in countries of destination. Our new law does 2 things. It notices every one of you when a convicted pedophile is traveling to your nation, and secondly, the passport gets stamped. This person is on the sex registry in the United States for crimes against children, so that your border security, if you want, can turn them away. 4,000 notices went out within the last 2 years to many countries in Europe. I urge you, I plead with you, I appeal to you to take a look, and the OSCE chair in office is in a unique position to promote the idea of these registries, and then, which are both domestic, and then you notice us when somebody's coming to America potentially to abuse our children, because again, the secrecy of traveling in that fashion on these child sex tourism trips, 1-2 weeks at a time, are proliferating all over the world. So again, the decline in prosecutions, the decline in victim identification, and again, the international Megan's Law concept, which the UK does as well, and we hope that all of us will be uniform on doing that.
Thank you. So we have 2 more questions, addressed as I told you, and I ask you if you have any, you can send a written form. There will be Azai Guglielmo and Makis Foridis, and we will close then. And then Picchi will answer. Please, Mr. Guglielmo.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Indeed, I'd like to join to my friends and the colleagues in thanking our German host for their excellent organization. I hope that our assembly will be remarkable, and we will cover all the aspects of our agenda, and successfully we will end. And of course, I also to congratulate my friend Picchi, Guglielmo, for taking this position. I hope that the person who knows very well our assembly will be able to address all the issues and the challenges that we are facing for about many years. And also, Mr. Guglielmo has very rightly underlined the issues, the challenging issues that covers and occupies our agenda, starting from unresolved and protracted conflicts, finishing by attempted to defeat terrorism, international terrorism, and appropriately handling the issue of migration in the region. And of course, you were right by saying that it is a time to uphold all our commitments as a member of OSCE, which was enshrined in the Helsinki Final Acts and in other founding documents of our organization. Unfortunately, we see today and witness totally different situation that one participating countries openly violates these principles and express disrespect to those principles that was the milestone of our organization, particularly when it comes to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the participating states. This is why I think that we should be treated with all violators of international legal norms in equal way. We shouldn't be tolerated to all these infringements, to all these violations taking place, regardless of where it is. This is why I think it is a time for the Italian chairmanship to take a good note of all these issues and, of course, try to make its contribution. This is why, my friend Picchi, I think you are aware about the situation over the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And you also know that Minsk co-chairs, unfortunately, failed to bring any contribution and to resolve this issue for 25 years. I do hope that if you, as a chairman in office, could come up with certain suggestions, particularly to revitalize the role of Minsk Conference in general, it would be helpful. This is why I do suggest to review the possibility of convening the Minsk Conference in some appropriate time and place in order to review the recent past and the deadlocks that we are in on the negotiations. The Minsk Conference have to review and find the answer why we are not in position to set this problem, to settle these issues, and to bring some peace and security to the region. This is why I do call on you to very seriously review, consider this proposal, and to see the possibility that we could really come together and discuss this issue, because the Minsk conference consists of 11 members. It is not about 3 co-chairs. There are 11 participating states, so they should be engaged in getting soon a solution to all the issues, particularly to the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you, and please, Makis Voridis, Greece.
It's not working. It's working. Good. So thank you very much. And after congratulating Minister Picchi for his assignment, let me just say that, Minister, you have been a member to our Committee for Counterterrorism. You know the priority that our Assembly does give to that important challenge, how we seriously intend to make a contribution on that in the efforts being made by the international community. So let me ask you, since now you're presiding the OSCE executive structures, and we are very fortunate to have you here and now on the other side, and since we work very closely with the executive structure of OSCE, let me ask you, are you going to keep high on the priorities of OSCE confronting terrorism? What specific initiatives are you going to take towards that direction and dealing with that issue? And third, since we are looking in working closer, even closer with the executive structures as Parliamentary Assembly, how do you see the role of parliamentarians and the cooperation with the executive structures of OSCE on that very challenging topic? Thank you.
Thank you, dear Makis. So questions are finished, it's over, and now I'd like to ask Minister Picchi to respond, to reply to the questions of parliamentarians. Please.
Thank you. Works.
I think you
nice both.
The first, yeah, no.
Hello.
No panic.
Works? No.
Yep.
No.
No. Should be.
Hello. Yeah. So, thank you for all the questions. I'll try to answer in the best possible way. First of all, we'll answer to the distinguished representative of Canada, Mr. Sorbara, who has a clear Italian name as origin, for sure. And, of course, international trade is important. It always led to, positive results for all the parties involved. International trade has to be symmetric, fair, and respect the environment. So these are the preconditions to have, international trade. So international trade could not be seen asymmetric for a number of reasons. On the specific point of the CETA and the approval is a little bit beyond the Italian chairmanship, so I may not take a position in my capacity of acting chairman in office on the specific issue, because it belongs to the European Union and its member state and Canada. But as said, I mean, we believe as chairmanship in international trade, but done in a fair, with key respect for environment, and the most important thing, that is symmetric between parties, so cannot be an asymmetric trade. On migration, with my friend Naima, I mean, Italy and the Italian chairmanship believes that migration is a key point on the agenda is on the highest point. So not only, I mean, we are in all the possible fora to say that migration is important, but we want to take very specific steps. First of all, I mean, stay in line with the ministerial decision of Hamburg in 2016 and support all the Global Compact negotiation in New York. To give a sign that we want to do something is that to have, we took the step to have the secondment of a migration coordinator between the Secretariat in OSCE Secretariat in Vienna in order to respond to the cross-dimensional nature of this challenge. In addition, we are considering the possibility of establishing a migration hub to mainstream all the migration-related activities of the organization, both at headquarters and field missions. The nature and the form of this migration hub is still to be very well defined and where it could take place, but it's our intention to go in this direction. The third point on migration is that the OSCE is a complementary platform to all the other platforms that are already in place. So we want to contribute and to assist the other international organizations and not to substitute them. On the role of the resolution of the OSCE PA resolution at government level. As I pointed out, I've been 10 years voting, discussing, amending resolution in this assembly. So I take the work of this assembly in the highest esteem. I believe that from this assembly lots of good ideas came out. I hope it's my turn as Italian chairmanship to put them in practice and to find a mechanism with the Secretary General and the President Tsereteli to find a way that that we may monitor the implementation and to have a report on what happens with these resolutions. And my invitation to the Assembly is trying to have maybe less resolution, but more focused and more strong message to the governments. But yes, I mean, we are ready as chairmanship to listen to the Assembly, because as I said in my speech, many things are possible to be said at parliamentary level. Mr. Chris Smith just said that the good meeting that was between the Russian delegation and the US delegation. I encourage, these bilateral talks to take place among all the delegations that, might have frictions. So my friends from Ukraine and the Russians, my friend from Georgia and Russia, my friends from Azerbaijan and Armenia, because the more we talk at parliamentary level, the easier is then for back in the capitals to find solutions. So in the highest importance of the PA. As for the question that my friend Chris Smith posed, of course, it's true. There is this, what he quoted, the declining prosecution on and lower identification of victims is of our utmost concern. We believe, and I said it in my, that the protection of all the vulnerable, in general, of all the vulnerable people is key. So the Italian chairmanship will put pressure on this, and on the specific of sex offences and sex-related crimes. I think it's very important for our organization to share best practices. So I really welcome, and would be the duty of the Italian chairmanship to share what the US has done in the internal legislation, and to present to all the fellow member states, friends and governments what they did, so that if all the positive could be taken into account, and why not, used in other member states. As for the Azerbaijan and my friend Azai, the Italian chairmanship is against, dual standards, discrimination whatsoever. So it's very keen. East and west of Vienna is still the same organization. It's not that we should judge in a different way an electoral process in one country or the other, and to have prejudice in any case. As for your suggestion of the reviving, let's use, not reviving, is there the Minsk conference and the Minsk process. Of course, Italy is keen to see movement in the direction, so all the tools that the Italian chairmanship has to have the process try to speed up and move. It's something that we will do. We spoke even on a bilateral way of this, because it's time to move forward in many of the so-called, unfortunately, so-called frozen conflict. So I'll take your point, and I'll discuss back in Rome, what we can practically do in order to progress on this side. As for the last question, Makis Voridis, well, yes, I was a member of the counterterrorism committee. It's one of the hottest, topics of the current affairs. So yes, we'll, as Italian chairmanship, we give all the attention. We did in May, and you attended the conference on foreign fighters. We have other events on the same topic. There will be one on cybersecurity in November. So yes, we will stay focused, and of course consider valid all the suggestions that might come from yourself and the committee that you chair, and that unfortunately I'm not anymore a part of. So I guess this is all, and I'm done.
Thank you very much, Diego Guglielmo. I think, colleagues, if you have any other questions, as I announced, you can always, or even now, send it in written form. So with this, I think we will conclude this session of questions and answers. Once again, I'd like to thank Italian chairmanship and personally Guglielmo Picchi for his, first of all, very good intervention here, and the last call was very important to strengthen cooperation, and of course to strengthen also work in our respective parliaments, not only in this hall. We really hope that it could be a very good example of a PA chairmanship, very fruitful, because we have this great experience from your side and a great will from our side, to be in those very challenging times together to fight, to overcome the difficulties that our parliamentarians rise today, and that we know that's around us everything. So it's appeared like a good farewell also for you in this assembly, and we have small gift. It's interesting, of course. We have great promoter of sport and football, especially Roberto Montella here, and football nowadays is a part of our life. So we'd like to give this T-shirt, to remember that you've been a good player in this team, and I wish you all the best in new Italian team for the better results, better outcome and victory. So this for... Oh, you can wear it now.
Yes.
So Okay. Now, before we move to the next point in our agenda, I would like to announce that it's our decision that Vice President Lord Bonus will chair the drafting committee, which will prepare the Berlin Declaration. As we agree on standing committee, so we'll have now a presentation of Makis Voridis, our President of Chairman of the Ad Hoc Committee Counter-Terrorism. And then later on, this topic will be discussed in a special supplementary item, which was proposed by Makis and the committee at the appropriate committee meeting. So please, Makis, floor is yours. Yes, again, from the seat, and we're looking forward to hear from you.
Thank you. Go? Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President. And let me just say that I won't take too much of your time on the supplementary item. And why is that? Because I am proposing actually a supplementary item on dealing with terrorism and violent extremism and radicalization that leads to terrorism. But we have decided in the Standing Committee that this will be discussed in the first committee. It was my view that this should have been normally discussed in the plenary. Why? Because this supplementary item actually touches on terrorism on a very inclusive way, and that means that it addresses the issue, the different aspects and problems on how to deal with terrorism with a cross-dimensional approach. Because when you deal with terrorism, yes, you do have questions like border security, you have questions of efficient legislation on the criminal justice system, but also you have questions on how you integrate foreign fighters, what policies you are going to follow inside prisons, because in prisons those people that are kept at a certain point, they will come out, and if they are not de-radicalized, that they still constitute problems. Other issues that have arisen, like children that were in families with those people who are terrorists, they were probably born there or even taken there, and now they're coming back, how they are going to deal with that particular point. You have issues relating with the victims. What do states have to do with the victims of terrorism, and how you try to heal the wounds that have been caused by terrorism. You have problems that you have to address with radicalized speech and the use of the internet into disseminating terrorist ideas and maybe even actually recruiting terrorists through the use of internet. And all these have to be done in the more careful way in order not to harm and human rights, to safeguard the highest level of human rights. So this supplementary item addresses this. It does have a history because it was first actually proposed by the Austrian, prepared and proposed by the Austrian chairmanship in the OSCE executive structures. Member states have agreed on that item, which is important and rare to have an agreement on such a difficult issue of all member states. That's why this supplementary item is so inclusive. OSCE, at the end of the day, did not manage to adopt this resolution because one member state opposed for political reasons, not for reasons of substance against the resolution. So we decided to promote that in order to strengthen our relationship with the OSCE executive structures, but also because it sets an inclusive document. That's why my view was that it should have been discussed in the plenary, because this is a cross-dimensional issue. It's not only about security, but it's also about human rights, it's about integration, it's about de-radicalization, so it's something that goes all aspects of security, it's cross-dimensional. For reasons that are technical and have to do with my work in the Greek Parliament, this was not feasible, so we decided to leave it for discussion in the first committee. So that's how it's going to be done. So I just take the floor, mostly, to raise you a question and, let's say, to raise the awareness on a more specific issue that is of strategic nature and concerns our work in the CCT, but also the contribution of us parliamentarians in trying to deal with terrorism and confronting terrorism. Okay, what did we say when we have created this committee last year? What did we say in this assembly? We said that we do not want to duplicate. That means we don't want to do the work that other international factors are doing. We are not experts, we are parliamentarians, so we are not claiming that we are bringing expertise on that field. And what else did we say? We said that we want to add value. That means that we are going to do something that only parliamentarians can do, and this is going to be our contribution to the international effort in dealing with terrorism. Okay, we've said that. What have we done as committee? Yes, we do participate in seminars. Yes, we do participate in the work of the OSCE executive structures. Yes, we raise the awareness about the work that we do in the committee, in the Parliamentary Assembly. Okay, now we are proposing a supplementary item, which is okay because this is a framework. But at the end of the day, we need to do something that we can go back to our nations and states and constituencies and say, okay, this is our added value. We did something more. And that's a question I've been hearing from all of you when I talk, that what can we do in this PA in order to be practical, in order to be useful, in order to do something more in this? So I asked myself, what do parliamentarians do? What do we do? We make legislation. Good. Are we going now to have in this assembly a multilateral discussion among parliamentarians about a model legislation? It's very difficult, it's very challenging, but also other factors arrive at the same result, which are more efficient to do that. Example, UN, United Nations have model legislation. So we don't have to do that again, but we can adopt what has been agreed in the United Nations. Do we have something in the United Nations that has been adopted concerning and challenging the terrorist threat? Yes. Many decisions, unanimously accepted, especially 2396 decision of United Nations dealing with passenger information, security controls in the airports, sharing this information about passengers, and in that sense, controlling more efficiently the way terrorists move. We can do that. So what parliamentarians can do about that? The other thing that we do is parliamentary control. We control our governments. If they have implemented their international obligations and obligations that also we have accepted inside this Parliamentary Assembly. Okay, I want you now to imagine the power that this Assembly can have towards governments, our governments, 57 governments, When parliamentarians from 57 different parliaments start asking questions whether our governments have implemented their obligations in order to make our states more safe, our citizens more secure, when they have to implement their obligations concerning sharing information, concerning the obligations they have under UN resolutions. So what we are promoting now here, and what we are trying to say and convince you, and we will need your support, is that we will have and prepare specific questions to be asked by us, the Parliamentary Assembly, to national governments, to our national governments, and check whether they have been implementing their obligations against terrorism, what they have already agreed, our governments, unanimously in the United Nations. So, if we start asking these questions, we're going to be getting answers. We are going to collect these answers. We are going to give these answers to Transnational Threat Department of the EC. They are going to be processed, and then we're going to be coming back in trying to push more for this implementation. And this is something that at the end of the line will arrive at unifying legislation, making our borders secure, exchange information between different agencies, being more effective in dealing with terrorism. And this is something very practical that we can do as parliamentarians, and this is something that we will need your help, we will need your participation, you will need your passion in order to achieve this specific commitment. Thank you very much, President. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Marcus. We all are witnesses. We witnessed how actively you are working with all the committee, and I think you delivered very interesting, very pragmatic, very useful, let's say, recommendations here. And I think this very advanced priority for the Parliamentary Assembly and for all the OSCE region, I think it's really very important work done by you personally and the committee. So we appreciate it and looking forward to continue in that spirit, in that activities. So as I said and informed our colleagues, there will be debate on supplementary item later on, but it was a presentation of the chairman of the committee. Thanks again, Marcus. Now we'll have just a second. So now we will proceed with the consideration of supplementary item number 12, minors on the move, the role of OSCE and the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly in building an effective protection framework, presented by the chair of the Ad Hoc Committee on Migration, Ms. Nahima Landry from Belgium. Dear Nahima, floor is yours with your very important also supplementary item. Please.
Dear President, dear colleagues, countries countries across the OSCE area are faced with significant numbers of unaccompanied and separated migrant children who, without the protection of their family, are at risk of exploitation and abuse. It is estimated that there are about 174,000 unaccompanied and separate children globally, and that we see also in Europe, while arrivals of migrants and also of migrant children overall decreased last year, the proportion of children arriving without their parents or relatives has increased. Last year, nearly 33,000 children arrived in Greece, Italy, Spain and Bulgaria, of whom 60% were unaccompanied or separated. And in 2017, there were about 32,000 applications from unaccompanied minors in the member states of the European Union. And the United States, too, has experienced a significant increase in the number of unaccompanied minors fleeing gang violence and poverty in Central America. In 2017, about 41,000 unaccompanied children were apprehended by customs and border protections. Some of the most significant challenges currently faced by refugee and migrant children relate to family reunification, long stays in first receptions facilities, as well as limited access to services such as protection, education and information. This is clearly an area where urgent action is needed across the three dimensions of the OSCE. I have therefore sponsored, on behalf of the Ad hoc Committee on Migration, a supplementary item on minors on the move, the role of OSCE and OSCE Parliamentary Assembly in building an effective protection framework. This resolution puts forth a number of recommendations to improve policies and procedures targeted at unaccompanied minors. Let me mention that this resolution is intended as a complement to the resolution on ensuring a coherent sharing and responsible governance of migration and refugee flows, which was presented by Filippo Lombardi on behalf of the Migration Committee last year in Minsk, and which already contained a number of recommendations concerning unaccompanied and separate children. And this year's resolution calls on OSCE participating states to implement adapted reception frameworks for minors and to give priority to foster care and smaller facilities. It also put emphasis to the importance of appointing a legal guardian at the earliest stage possible, and to ensure that minors receive quality and comprehensive information and that they have access to their personal files. It also urges participating states to better coordinate their procedures and to harmonize their guidelines concerning minors, for example, with respect to the age determination methods, while keeping the minor safety and best interests in mind. As an example of best practice, the resolution suggests granting unaccompanied minors who do not qualify for asylum or subsidiary protection a special protection status until a durable solution can be found. Other areas which the resolution touches upon include access to education, recommending that all children are provided free primary and secondary education, regardless of their legal status, including instruction in the official language of the state. The need to protect children from human trafficking and other forms of exploitation is also underlined. And the topic of separation of migrant children in the United States has recently received much attention. At the beginning of June, I issued a press release in response of the numerous reports concerning a deliberate practice of separating migrant children from family members upon arrival at the US-Mexican border. I also underlined that this practice runs contrary to international norms that ensure the right to family unity, and that it inflicted additional trauma on children who are already in an extremely vulnerable situation and who really depend on their family members for emotional, psychological and material support. It is imperative that the best interest of the child remains the primary consideration in all actions considering children. And that's why this resolution recommends that participating states prevent the separation of children and their relatives at the border controls, but also during any other procedures. A special emphasis is placed on family reunification procedures, which should be accelerated and simplified, while ensuring that the best interests of the child remain the primary consideration. The task of addressing the particular situation of unaccompanied and migrant children will demand a concerted effort at many levels and by a multitude of actors. Surely we can agree to step up our efforts to improve the safety and well-being of those most vulnerable migrant children and to develop an effective protection framework to ensure that they are offered the due process which they deserve. I thank you for your attention and look forward to a successful debate on this issue.
Thank you very much, dear Naima. This is a very important supplementary item. We will have debate, and once again, I'd like to say that it reflects very active work on this topic of personal view on your committee, Migration Committee, and I think there will be interesting questions or ideas expressed by our fellow parliamentarians. We have already a list of speakers on this item, and the first will be Mr. Philemon Vela from U.S.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Philemon Vela, and I want to thank our Belgian colleague, Naima Landry, for her draft resolution regarding minors on the move, the role of the OSCE and the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly in building an effective protection framework. I also want to thank her and other members of the Assembly for their important work regarding migration and for their expression of concern about the current situation in the United States. I represent the 34th District of Texas, where the United States borders Mexico. It is the border where three of my grandparents came over in the early 1900s, where my great-great-grandfather came through in the 1850s. Many of the children who have been separated from their parents as a result of the administration's zero-tolerance policy are in facilities in the place that I call home. The empirical evidence is clear. Separating children from their parents is a traumatizing experience that can affect a child for the rest of his or her life. Like many of you, I have grave concerns about the family separation crisis unfolding in the United States of America. I find it appalling that our government, through its own volition, decided that it was in the national interest of the United States to cause such human suffering. Thousands of immigrant families have been ripped apart due to this inhumane policy. As many as 3,000 children were separated from their parents without a plan from the administration to reunite them. Fortunately, a federal court has ordered the administration to stop these disgraceful actions. As we wait for the administration to fully comply with this order, thousands of children remain to be reunited. The world is watching the United States as some parents are deported to their home countries while their children are kept away, or as some children are sent to the East Coast while their parents are detained on the other side of the country. I have seen with my own eyes those who have been victimized by this atrocious policy. To be clear, there are no laws in the United States that require families to be torn apart. What these children are experiencing is reprehensible, unacceptable, and in blatant disregard to the values of the United States. Our country was founded on the notion that all people are worthy of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. For generations, immigrants from places all around the world have come to the United States searching and hoping to fulfill the American dream. Today, for thousands of parents and children, the American dream has turned into an American nightmare. We must protect the human rights of all, regardless of citizenship or place of origin. We have long recognized family unity as an essential human right. As such, I encourage every nation represented here to pledge to protect immigrant families, to protect immigrants, and most importantly, to protect immigrant children. Being here today is a reminder to me that the United States is not alone in facing the challenges of migration. While the Mediterranean Sea is not the Rio Grande River, Europe too faces these same challenges. How to receive newcomers into our societies, to provide them with protection from the violence from which they have fled, to respect the fundamental rights of humanity, to provide particular comfort to children who experience but do not understand the chaos around them, and to give them all a chance to live in peace. It is important to remember that the United States is a proud nation of immigrants. The United States has thrived economically, culturally, and virtually every way you can imagine as a result of its immigrant history. It is wise to secure our borders, but we should do so with dignity and respect towards every human being, especially children. It is true that immigration comes with some risk. It is also true that nations must implement rules that will allow just migration. But we must have the courage to implement these rules in the most humanitarian way and to take those risks in order to have a better future, not only for the newcomers in our midst, but for ourselves as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir, very much. Now, I'd like to ask dear Heidi Fry from Canada. Dear Heidi, we'll listen to your report tomorrow, but please, now the floor is yours. Please. And then will be Mr. Stephen King from US again. Please. Microphone, please.
I just wanted to congratulate Nahima Landry on an excellent report, and I think she has focused on probably the most vulnerable of all migrants, children, because children are in need of protection. They're vulnerable from every kind of reason. They're vulnerable because of trauma. They are vulnerable because they are easy to be trafficked. They're easy to be exploited. They're easy to be sold into sexual slavery and into labor market trafficking, as we well know. And so it's really important. Not only that, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child explicitly states that wherever we look at children, any country should be mindful of the best interest of the child. As a physician, I can tell you now that it is well documented. There's great evidence that shows that when a child is separated from their family or from their primary caregivers, that trauma, as my colleague in the US just said, is actually there for the lifetime of the child. And it affects the kind of citizen, the kind of human being that child is going to grow up to be. So it's important that we focus on this vulnerable group of people. I think I support this particular supplementary item because I think what it's calling for is most important. It's calling for all of us, as states of the OSCE, to come together and to look at how we set up a framework to deal with this, that we all agree on a framework that's going to protect children around the world who are going to be tomorrow's citizens, who are going to therefore be great citizens or not so great citizens because they're traumatized. So it's in our best interest to look after the children of the world. I also think it's important that she's talking about data, because it's been shown actually that about 56% of all UNHCR refugees do not ask for age data. And it's also been shown that about 20% of refugees from countries where there are conflict areas do not ask for age data. So we don't even know how many children there are in the system that are in need of protection. I think it's really important that we listen to this, that we follow this, the particular recommendation asking for a framework. And I wanted to just say that in Canada, we have just developed a similar framework to look at how we protect vulnerable children. And issues such as detention of children in detention centers alone is also a very important problem that we have to face. When we cannot find family or relatives or blood relatives, even within Canada, we try to find families who are already there to be able to take those children so they can be in culturally appropriate homes. But if you cannot find that, children in Canada are kept for 48 hours in detention. We don't support that. We're trying to find a way to deal with it, to put these children in a safe place. We also want to keep children whom we cannot find any relatives for, who are not able to sit with other adults who come from that refugee pool, because we don't know if some of these adults are traffickers or people who will exploit and abuse the children. So there are really important considerations that we need to take when we look at this kind of framework and how we develop it. And so I just again wanted to congratulate Nahima for great work, and I'm hoping that everyone here who have children and who do not have children, who care about children, will be able to support this supplementary item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dear Haiti, another speaker, Mr. Steve King, U.S. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I regret first that this immigration debate from the United States has spilled into OSCE. I regret that our partisan disagreements are being voiced here because I've watched this issue for a long time in Europe and in the United States and in the Western Hemisphere, and there's a significant difference. I would like to let the people know here that I have walked into the no-go zones in places like Molenbeek in Belgium and the Rinkeby area of Scotland, or excuse me, of Sweden, the Rinkeby area of Sweden, and into Paris where they planned the attacks right to the apartment. I wanted to see and understand what's going on in the cities across Europe as a result of migration. I have significant sympathy for the situations that exist, especially for Greece and Italy, who are the main transit zones across the Mediterranean into Europe. And I've gone into those areas and I've walked with that flow of migration from horizon to horizon of the migratory population that's flowing into Europe. It's diminished to a degree, but at that peak, as I walk with them, I would ask them, where are you from? And I soon learned, don't bother to ask because they won't tell you. The honest answer at least. But other questions, where are you going? Germany. Where in Germany? I don't know. Do you have friends there? No. Do you have family there? No. Do you have a job there? No. Well, what will you do when you get there? They shrug their shoulders and they say, Germany will take care of me. That magnet has been a strong magnet that's moved a lot of people across this continent. And I reflect on the motivations that take place in the Western Hemisphere, where we have coyotes, human traffickers that have become travel agents, recruiting people in Central America in particular now to transition up through the 1,500 miles out of, say, El Salvador, Guatemala, up to McAllen, Texas. I've walked with those, been with those children. I've talked to those people. I've gone into the transfer stations of those people. And I've listened to the people that work with them that want to help them. And they tell me this, 100% of the girls before they leave their homes in Central America are giving birth control because they expect they will be raped along the way. And at the other end, from 7 different sources, independent sources, the answer is 75% of them are. That is a tragedy that's brought about by the magnet for migration. And we need to be talking about the root causes of this. Also, I'd like to address the conflated issue of the situation in the United States. The story was that there were 2,000 children who were separated from their parent or parents, and then it was 2020. Now I hear that it's 3,000. There are some children that we weren't able to identify, and I'd like to quantify that for the body here. There were 7,635 children who were unaccompanied alien children, not with their parents, not divided. And when we sent out a message, where are you, and asked for a response, 6,075 were with their sponsors. Sometimes their sponsors are illegal aliens too. But 28 had run away. I confess, we lost them. I don't know where they went. The rest of them, 5 had been deported, 52 were relocated with a preferred sponsor, but 1,475 didn't respond to the inquiry. That happens all the time. So we just have not chased that down yet, Mr. President. So I'd say this, let's pay attention to what's happening to our culture, to our civilization. Let's not suggest the idea that nation states don't have borders and that they can't protect those borders, and that we can help people much better within their home countries, and we should accelerate our effort to make sure that people can be successful and safe and happy in their home countries, where they tell us they're successful and safe, that they're happier in their home countries than they are if they have to migrate. Their first choice is be home. Second choice is be safe. And we want them safe in their homes, and we should help them more there. And I don't think we're putting a Band-Aid on the problem here with some of the discussion we're having today. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, dear Stephen. And the last speaker on my list, and my special pleasure to announce my very good friend and old colleague who rejoined us in the Assembly from Finland, Pia Kauma. Dear Pia, very much pleased to see you here in this hall, and please, floor is yours.
Dear Mr. Chair,
Need a little bit more effort there to start it. So it could be another button, Pia.
Well, yeah. I don't have other microphones. Now you're hearing me, maybe. Okay, so, dear Mr. Chair, the supplementary item of minors on the move is very important.
So that's it.
Oh, it required intelligence, not force, this time, sorry. So, dear Mr. Chair, the supplementary item of minors on the move is very important. This issue was handled also in the Council of Europe during the past year, where it was reported that since the year 2015, there are 1 million asylum seekers under 18 only in Europe. According to Europol, at least 10,000 asylum seekers have disappeared completely. They do not exist in any register. When it comes to children on the move on the global level, the number is of course much higher. According to UNICEF, the number of child refugees has more than doubled between 2005 and 2015, from 4 million to 9 million. Dear colleagues, as you know, these young people are very vulnerable when it comes to human trafficking, prostitution, and all kinds of exploitation. Therefore, each OSCE member state has to have adequate legislation in order to ensure the legal rights of minor asylum seekers. It has to be secured that these young children are aware of their rights also. Clear guidelines have to be established for officials who decide on the status of the child to prevent the children from being sent back to a country where they might be persecuted or at risk. One problem lies also on practical level, as different countries have very different practices on how they register and keep track of these children. In some countries, like Estonia, the cases of missing minor asylum seekers are investigated immediately, whereas in some other countries, similar cases are not given immediate attention. Dear Mr. Chair, it is stated in the item number 17A of the supplementary item that it is very important to cooperate with professional groups and non-governmental organizations. I entirely agree with that. This is important not only on national level, but internationally between OSCE member states. In addition, there should be a common database for all missing children, where the information related to all missing children and observations on their latest movements should be reported. When addressing the human rights situation of minors on the move, it is also essential to talk about the rights for basic services, such as education. Providing with free primary and secondary education, including instruction in the official language of the host country, is of utmost importance. The sooner the child learns the language of his or her new country, the better he or she can adapt to the new circumstances and start having faith for the new and protected life, free from any abuse and violence. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear Pia. And now I'd like to ask Doris Burnett to take the floor. Dear Doris, please.
Vielen Dank, lieber Herr Präsident. Ich gebe sehr gerne meinem Kollegen King aus den USA recht, wenn er sagt, wir müssen die Wurzeln der Migration bekämpfen. Das heißt, die Armut, die Not, aber auch Umwelteinflüsse, Trockenheit, Überschwemmungen, dass wir den Ländern helfen, diese Katastrophen oder auch die Armut im eigenen Land zu überwinden. Absolut einverstanden. Dafür müssen wir mehr tun. Dafür strengen wir uns auch in Deutschland in unserem Haushalt an, nicht nur Geld auszugeben für Militär, für eine bessere Ausstattung, sondern auch dafür, dass wir mehr Geld in Entwicklungshilfe, in wirtschaftliche Zusammenarbeit geben und gucken, dass die Länder endlich mal auf die Beine kommen. Dann hört nämlich auch der Druck, auszuwandern, zu gucken, wo man Geld verdienen kann, wo man eben nicht kaputt geht oder auf gut Deutsch verreckt, weil man nichts zu essen hat, dann hört dieser Druck endlich auf. Aber wenn wir uns heute verabreden, das alle zu tun, dann ist morgen die Lage noch lange nicht besser. Sie wissen es selbst, wie lange es dauert, bis so etwas wirkt. Aber in der Zwischenzeit müssen wir mit den Menschen umgehen. Und für meine Begriffe gibt es keine Menschen erster, zweiter und dritter Güte. Wir sind alle Menschen gleich. Hier müssen wir uns und deswegen machen wir hier in Europa auch große Anstrengungen, den Menschen, die jetzt halt geflüchtet sind, zu helfen. Zunächst einmal zu helfen, dass sie überleben können. Aber wenn wir feststellen, dass sie gekommen sind, nicht aus Asylgründen, nicht aus politischen Gründen, wo wir sie nach dem Genfer Flüchtlingsabkommen aufnehmen müssen, dann tun wir auch alles, die Menschen wieder geordnet zurückzuführen in die Länder, wo sie herkommen. Das kann dauern, das kostet auch Geld, aber umgekehrt hat gerade Deutschland ja auch eine bestimmte Geschichte. Und wir vergessen nicht, was Amerika getan hat, indem Amerika und auch andere Länder während der Nazi-Gewaltherrschaft deutsche Flüchtlinge aufgenommen hat und dann nicht erst lang gefragt hat. Und deswegen, aus diesem Grund fühlen wir uns auch verantwortlich, mit den Menschen menschlich umzugehen und sie zu behandeln wie Menschen und nicht wie eine Sache. Aus dem Grund, ich glaube, wir sind nicht weit auseinander von den eigentlichen Zielen. Bloß haben wir natürlich auch vielleicht ein bisschen eine andere Auffassung, wenn wir sagen, wir müssen mit Menschen anders umgehen. Ja, wir haben sehr viele Flüchtlinge in unseren Städten, aber ausgerechnet dort, wo es so gut in Deutschland, so gut wie keine Flüchtlinge gibt, da gibt es die größten Proteste dagegen. Und dort, wo wir eine hohe Anzahl von Ausländern sowieso schon haben, da geht es sogar relativ vernünftig zu, weil wir wissen, wie man mit den Menschen umzugehen hat, wie man mit einer solchen Lage umzugehen hat. Deswegen sollten wir uns wirklich hier alle daran erinnern. Weiß Gott, wir können morgen alle mal Flüchtlinge werden und wir wollen alle menschlich behandelt werden. Deswegen sollen wir, so wie wir behandelt werden wollen, es auch anderen, zumindest zeitweise, selbst wenn wir sie anschließend zurückschicken, sollten wir mit den Menschen umgehen. Vielen Dank.
Great. Very good. Thank you, Doris. And I think all your interventions have been very useful, very important. The positions from US, from European countries, and of course Germany. And we understand that it's a hot topic and it's a great interest of the society. So it's a right that we're debating, discussing here freely. So thank you very much. Dear Landry, dear Nahima, and now the floor is yours if you'd like to respond to all those questions or remarks or ideas here. Please. The floor is yours.
Would like to thank all of my colleagues here in the Assembly for their contribution, and they underlined that it's very important not only, like Doris said, that we treat people like human beings, but that's what we are all, even if we have a different background. In the first place, we are human beings and certainly children who are in need of protection. And this is what the supplementary item is about. We are talking about the most vulnerable group, the children, and more than children with their families. It treats children who are here, who have flee from war or persecution or their country, and who are here in Europe or in America without their relatives. And that's why we should also take measures, and we foresee in this supplementary item some recommendation so we can deal better and so we could protect better this vulnerable group. And I hope you will support this supplementary item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we will go to voting procedure with the supplementary item number 12, paragraph by paragraph. And there are 6 amendments to it which have been already tabled. I'd like to remind members that under Rule 22 of the Rules of Procedure, the only members who may speak are the mover of the amendment or another member in favor, 1 member opposed, and the principal sponsor of the supplementary item. In this case, it will be Ms. Landry. So speeches and amendments or on amendments will be limited to 1 minute. Please keep the rule. It's our request. Let's start then. Where's my hammer? So now we are voting on paragraph 1. But just it's an amendment to paragraph 1? Okay. Okay, well, any objections to paragraph 1?
Azerbaijan.
We have objection. Okay. Okay, then what we're...
Yes, behind the invitation. There's a white table, and on the white table there. Nobody will speak. No.
Okay, in this case, we're voting for this paragraph. Just a second. Okay, so we'll start voting on paragraph 1. Please, who is in favor of this paragraph, please raise your hands. Okay.
Russians, they have objections. Yes, I know. That's why we're voting.
Okay, thank you. Who is against?
Yeah.
Again, not to have another questions, we have settled practice that it's very clear voting. We're not asking for abstentions, but there was some call yesterday, but so who is abstaining? Nobody is abstaining. So it's voted and it's passed. Now we come to amendment number 1, and I call Ms. Moore from the United States to take floor and speak about this amendment.
Mr. President, Ms. Moore is not present, but I'll speak on her behalf. Bringing participating states and neighboring countries like Serbia, Macedonia, Albania, Canada, and Mexico, as well as countries already hosting large numbers of refugees, including Turkey and Jordan, together. Utilizing ODIHR's mandate to monitor and report on human rights situations by interviewing refugees to gather information on human rights abuses they faced in countries from which they fled, as was done when refugees fled Kosovo for Albania in the late 1990s, and are reporting on the general human rights situation and reception of refugees. Appointing the OSCE Strategic Police Matters Unit to increase dialogue and cooperation among police, border management, and other law authorities from affected OSCE countries, and foster human treatment of refugees and migrants by law enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against this amendment? Please, Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. President. Steve King of the United States. I support the first part of this amendment about reaffirming that all individuals who have crossed or are seeking to cross international borders are entitled to due process in the assessment of their legal status. And I wanted to mention that anyone who shows up at a port of entry in the United States is entitled to due process. And so as anybody that's picked up also, it's a different process if they come across the border illegally. But it says then, and expressing concerns about government policies that criminalize cross-border movements. That's a bridge too far for me, and unless the author is willing to strike the language, I won't be willing to support this amendment. And so I'll vote no if that language remains in the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Nahima, if you have any comment?
Hello. Yeah. I would recommend to fully support this amendment of Mrs. Moore, since it's separating children from their parents is against the international norms, and also it inflicts with the right of family unity, and it also gives trauma to children when they are separated from their relatives. So I hope we fully support this amendment of Mrs. Moore.
Thank you very much. I will put this amendment for voting. So who is in favor? Okay. Who is against? Was it, figures? Yeah, tell me. But there was a clear. And abstentions. And abstentions, please. 1,
6, 7. How many did you get in favour?
I think it wasn't many.
18 no and 7 abstentions.
And in favor?
In favour, I think 42.
Maybe. Okay, 45 for. There was 18 against and 7 in favor. In abstention. I'm sorry. So it's already proved. I'd like to make some clarification, dear colleagues, as far as so that Russian delegation had some questions. So. When it comes to the paragraph, without amendments, you can speak. If you have objection, it's not a matter to take floor. That's under our rules. When it comes to the amendment, if you're opposing amendment, then you can speak. So that's a clarification, and thank you for understanding. If there's no objection, then we are starting immediately voting, and it's no. It's under the rule. It's not about you that you'd like to speak. It's not about you. It's about the rule. You wanted to speak when paragraph is under, let's say, voting process, but you couldn't. I'm very sorry. I'm keeping rules here, and I have 2 advisors here.
Я по поправке хотел выступить.
No. You didn't show me.
Я держал табличку во время выступления по поправке. Вы не дали мне слово.
Нет. Я вам честно говорю, у нас есть... Это все записывается. Пожалуйста, если это так, я могу даже извиниться публично, но это не так. Вы хотели сказать в начале, тогда не было... Okay, just please. Nobody's, I'm sorry, discriminating you here. Just, we are all equal here. So, let's see to move another paragraph.
Take all the 2 to 6.
Yeah, now, so we don't have any amendments from paragraph 2 to 6. So can we vote for those paragraphs together? Can we vote? Okay. Then who is in favor? From 2 to 6. Yeah, we are voting now several paragraphs together from 2 to 6 because no objections, no amendments.
No objections, we should just adopt them.
Yeah. Okay. But who is against? Nobody's against. 1 against. And abstentions? 1 abstention too. Okay, it's adopted. Now we are considering amendment number 2. Amendment number 2 is moved by, again, Ms. Moore, U.S. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I also speak on behalf of Mrs. Moore. The OSCE has a large body of commitments addressing refugee and migrant issues stretching back to the Helsinki Final Act. Additionally, its institutions, field missions, and personnel are experienced in crisis response and addressing human rights issues. OSCE efforts should be strengthened by, first, taking into consideration the OSCE PA Ad Hoc Migration Committee reports and resolution, including the extensive recommendations that address the safety and well-being of children. Second, using the OSCE's commitments on family reunification to promote more effective policies to accommodate reunification requests and prevent separation of families at borders. Third, utilizing the OSCE's tolerance unit in ODIHR to combat intolerance that harms implementation of wide-ranging humane resettlement efforts and, if unaddressed, can fuel violence. And finally, providing safe routes for immigration that will help to mitigate human traffickers and ensure that unaccompanied children in particular do not fall prey to human traffickers and or smugglers.
Okay, is anybody against? Does anyone wish to speak against this amendment? No, it's not the case. So we even, if Naima wants to say something? Okay. You have a small problem with the...
I fully agree with this amendment.
Okay, great. So it's a no objection, so we even not put on vote. Everything is clear, but we can pass it, yeah? So it's proved, because nobody was against, and we're having rules that we could not move on procedure. So now amendment number, okay. Now we're voting for paragraphs 7 and 8 together, because no objections, no amendments. So who is in favor of those two paragraphs together? Please raise your hands. That will be okay. Thank you. Who is against? Nobody is against. Abstentions? One abstention. One, but important. Okay, it's proved. Thank you. Then we are now at the paragraph 9, amendment of Schenker-Zalon from Hungary. Please, floor is yours. You can speak about your amendment.
Thank you for floor. Should there be such a decision, the main aim of the work of the OSCE should be to tackle the root causes of migration. And therefore, I propose, after the words issue of migration, insert the following, with a view to tackling the root causes and stemming the flow of illegal migration. And, Mr. President, if you allow me, I would have an oral sub-amendment.
Yeah, we know that. Just was informed, but after this, first we will finish with the first one, and then I'll give you floor for...
Okay, thank you very much.
So you all heard the amendment, you know that. If it's against, anybody's against?
No, we have.
Nobody's against. Okay. Then, with your permission, we will prove that. So, according to our rules, especially particularly paragraph 10 of Rule of 22, oral amendments may only be considered if there is unanimous agreement by the members of the committee or plenary present. So I'd like to ask then members, if you have unanimous agreement on that, then we can move that oral amendment.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Then our Hungarian friend could speak about the amendment.
The oral amendment.
Thank you very much. For more precise wording, I propose to change the illegal migration to irregular migration. So illegal to irregular. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody want to speak, to oppose, against? Not the case. So we can. Oh yeah, I mean, but First, we are asking who is for, who is against, abstention, and then opinion, please.
Would like to advise you to agree also with this oral amendment, since there is a difference between irregular and illegal migration. So it's better to use the correct term, and it's irregular migration. Thank you for your support.
Okay. So if it's a no, any objections, and nobody's opposing, then we can move on and we can consider this as a approved amendment. So amendment passed and adopted. Thank you. Oral amendment adopted. Yes, it's about oral amendment. Now,
Amendment 4.
We've
still got Amendment 3 because we just.
No, it was Amendment 3.
We've approved changing.
Okay. So the one also, the reminder, so we'd like to, we have to vote on whole paragraph now, because we amended paragraph and now we're voting for whole paragraph. It's paragraph number 9.
No, first of all, we do Amendment 3.
We've done it already.
No, we didn't.
No, we did the oral amendment. Now we're doing the amendment as amended.
Okay. Now we are voting, just again clarification, I'm sorry for that. We are now voting the paragraph
Amendment 3.
which we amended recently. The change of wording in amendment, it's a little bit confusing. So who is in favor? Yeah? Is anybody against? No, Nahima is, she's a, Nahima is also agreed on that, so it's adopted. No abstentions.
No abstentions.
Yeah.
And now we vote on the paragraph as amended.
Okay. Now we're voting for the paragraph as amended. Who is in favor? Who is against? Any abstentions? One abstention. So it's already adopted. Thank you very much. Now we are voting for Amendment 4. Mr. Bauer from Czech Republic. I think you have to wait a little bit, a few seconds.
Can you hear me, Mr. President? Okay, thank you. Thank you for the floor. I suggest to delete paragraph 10 completely. The reason why I suggest to delete this paragraph is the fact that both global compacts have not been adopted yet. They are due to be adopted at the end of the year 2018, as the text of the draft resolution correctly mentions, which means it's highly difficult to anticipate the outcomes of the negotiations at this early stage. Basically, the negotiations can take any directions. For this reason, we cannot quite logically support something, the final version of which we have not seen yet. Also, I would like to point out that it's impossible that not all OSCE participating countries will adopt the global compact. Therefore, it's really too early to call upon the OSCE participating states and their respective parliaments to take a leading role in the effective implementation of the both compacts. Thank you for the consideration and understanding.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody who wants to speak against this amendment? Okay.
Germany or UK?
But sorry, but UK was first, so
okay.
Yeah. Lord,
right. Thank you very much. I wish to oppose the amendment because it goes against the international solidarity which runs through the whole of this resolution. Yes, it hasn't been finalised, the compact, but we know pretty well where it is, and every country has a chance to influence it. If we delete paragraph 10, we're saying we're not going to have an international set of responsibilities. We're going to be saying that we don't want to be international. It would send quite the wrong message about the whole of the resolution. I therefore hope we'll oppose this amendment.
Naima, please, your opinion.
I agree with what Lord Tubbs just said, and it's not without reason that we have put this paragraph into the text. It's because it's very important when there is there is an agreement on from the United Nations on the Global Compact that also the OSCE participating states will do everything to implement this global compact, and it is really necessary to have more solidarity between the member states. That's why we have to keep this paragraph 10 in the text. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I will start voting on the amendment. Please, who is in favor?
Of deleting paragraph 10.
Of deleting this paragraph, who is in favor? I'm clarifying this voting for deleting this paragraph.
Point of order.
Please, point of order, please.
It may be me, but I think there is some confusion as to what we are doing. As I understood it, you are asked for a vote in favour of deleting this amendment. I think we might have understood it if we were asked to vote for the amendment or against the amendment.
Okay.
We've had a speaker against the amendment. I'd be grateful if we could clarify it. It's not your fault.
Yeah, of course.
Sure.
I did it 2 times, but maybe the word in favor from speaker is a little bit confusing. We can change it. Who is for?
Некорректно тоже был поставлен, считаем, вопрос. Просим еще раз переголосовать, потому что либо мы голосуем за поправку, либо против поправки. Поддерживаю коллегу из Великобритании по процедуре голосования.
So I couldn't say that was not correct. It's our official language. We're using that in favor, sometimes for, sometimes against, sometimes no. Please don't try to find any reason to criticize the process. It's my let's say, request to you. Be cooperative. We are cooperative with you. There's a very constructive spirit here. I could accept all objections which are correct. Thank you. So, thank you, Mr. Bonus, for this again. Who is for this amendment? So that's more easy. Who is for this amendment? Okay, thank you. Now, who is against this amendment? Sorry for that, you're holding a little bit long. but we need precise numbers. And abstentions?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
What's the result? Okay. 49 for, 85 against, 13 abstentions. So the amendment is rejected. So it will stay as it is. So now,
need to vote on paragraph 10.
where is it?
We've rejected the amendment, so the paragraph stands.
Okay.
Now another amendment, amendment number 5.
Paragraph 11. We have to vote on paragraph 11 first.
Give me the order. But there's a no amendments in paragraph 11.
No amendment.
Okay, then in paragraph 11, in the paragraph 11, no amendments. There are any objections, but we can put on the vote. Yeah, who is for paragraph 11? Thank you very much. Who is against?
1, 2, 3.
Abstentions? Not the case. Thank you very much. Paragraph is adopted.
So we get amendment 5.
Give me amendments list. Okay. Amendment number 5 to the paragraph 11. It's after paragraph 11, insert the following new paragraph. Ms. Moore, U.S., please, floor is yours. You can
Sir, I'll be taking this over here to your left or to your right.
Oh, okay.
Yes, there.
Great.
I'm not Miss Moore.
And I'm sorry, we have here Ms. Moore, but we know who you are.
Substituting in lieu thereof is Mr. Cohen of Tennessee and Memphis in the United States. Thank you, sir. And this amendment would call on participating states to put in place or strengthen migration policies that advance the best interests of the child seeking refuge, asylum, or migrating to the country, in part by assuring the child is not placed in detention, needlessly separated from their family by immigration officials, remains with parents at all times if possible, and or be reunited with family as quickly and expeditiously as possible. My colleague and friend, a Republican, I'm a Democrat, Mr. Hudson, was concerned about the language saying not placed in detention. He agrees that we should say that they should not needlessly be separated from their family by immigration officials, that they remain with the parents at all times if possible, and or be reunited with family as quickly and expeditiously as possible. I've agreed with Mr. Hudson that the question of placed in detention is a bit vague and ambiguous, and he has an amendment which I am in favor of, and I would advance the amendment that we have here, amendment number 5, for the purposes of Mr. Hudson being able to call up his amendment to the amendment which I do not oppose.
Thank you very much. Does anybody want to? It's oral amendment.
It's an oral amendment, so you have to call Mr. Hudson.
Yeah, but previously we will finalize this.
No,
okay.
We have the oral amendment.
Okay. Now we have an oral amendment, so Mr. Hudson could move it, could speak about amendment, please.
Mr. President, my oral amendment would be to strike 3 words, placed in detention, and the comma, so that the amendment would read, children are not needlessly separated from their families and so forth. I believe one of the strengths of this organization is that we may have disagreements at times, but we all share a belief in common principles. I think in this case, we all agree, and in the United States, Republicans and Democrats agree that children should not be separated from their parents, that we should find a way to keep families together, to avoid the trauma of that separation. But there's 2 options. Either you allow the person who's come across a border, in this case illegally, to go free, or you keep that family unit together in what could be called detention. It could be a hotel room. We're just not sure about the details of that, but we do agree with the principles that everyone should have human rights, everyone should have due process, and that we should keep families together, not separate children. And so if you would support my oral amendment and take those 3 words out in the spirit of OSCE, where we seek to come together supporting principles. I hope that this example of my liberal Democrat friend and me being a conservative Republican in the United States can work together. I hope we can all agree and support my oral amendment. So with that, Mr. President, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cohen and Mr. Hudson, for this cooperation. Well, now I'd like to ask, is anybody against of this oral amendment?
So we can't take the oral amendment.
So, okay, but they can. So under our rules, if anybody is against oral amendment, it should be consensus on that. Then unfortunately we have to delete it, so we couldn't move on. You are against oral amendment? Okay. Then, fortunately, then we will go to vote amendment, which was proposed by Mr. Cohen.
So we need anyone speaking against the amendment?
Well, so does anybody want to speak against this amendment, but not oral? Oral is already done, we understand it. About this amendment, anybody wants?
No.
Thank you.
We need more mediation in your delegation here.
North Carolina is okay, but we won't go for Kansas.
So.
Am I recognized, Mr. President?
Your example, unfortunately, didn't work. Please, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I regret that there wasn't a unanimous consent to accept the oral amendment offered by Mr. Hudson, because we're left with language here in this proposed amendment before us that says we have to ensure that children are not placed in detention. I mean, and then it says there's this little clause there, but shall not be placed in detention. And how could we be for a policy that didn't allow that to happen? Because when someone crosses the border, maybe it's a mother and a daughter, and they violated the law, that would mean then we couldn't put the parent in detention either. So there's a contradiction internally in this, and for that reason, I can't support the underlying amendment without the oral amendment that was denied. And also a part that I had an objection to is language in there that said remain with a parent at all times. Sometimes it's just not practical, and we need to do the practical things. But as I looked at this issue, I noticed that we had a lot of mothers and even more fathers who were separated from their children when they were deployed in the military. One of them is United States Senator Joni Ernst, who was separated from her 4-year-old daughter for 14 months while she was fighting for freedom. So I think we should put this whole thing in perspective, and I regret I can't support the amendment. I return my time.
Okay, so now... Yeah, now is opinion of Nahima Landry, and then we will proceed for voting. Please.
I'm also in favor of this amendment and would be grateful if it would be adopted.
Thank you. I don't want to fully reject the term in favor, but with respect to Lord Bonus, I will ask you who is for this amendment. Well, thank you very much. Now against, who is not in favor? 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. Abstentions? 8 abstentions. Thank you very much. So it's 92 against 15 and 8 abstentions. So it's very clear it was adopted. Thank you. Now we'll vote together, or if there are no amendments, no against the paragraph 12 to 20. So again, paragraphs from 12 to 20 altogether. Any objections? No objections. So it's adopted. Thank you very much. And our last amendment now, it's from Spain. Mr. Cosido, the author of this, please, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, the goal of this amendment is just to reinforce the importance to fight against the criminal organization that they exploit the child that are in some kind of illegal immigration through sexual exploitation, labor exploitation, any kind of exploitation. I think the best way that we have to protect these child is to fight against this criminal organization that trafficking with human beings. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody wants to speak against this amendment? Okay, thank you. Not the case. Then we will... Nahima, please, your opinion.
Yes, I would like to thank my colleague of Spain for his amendments. It is true that minors are at risk of abuse, and therefore I would advise to support also this amendment.
Okay, thank you. Now I'd like to ask you to vote for this paragraph. Who is in favor? Who is for? Whatever. I mean, it's very difficult to count. I mean, everybody, almost. But we will count it. Maybe 100? 103. Yeah, okay. And who is against? Nobody. Are you against? Okay. Are you against? No. David? No, okay. Well, nobody's against. Thank you very much. Abstentions? I don't know, no abstentions. It passed. Thank you. So it's adopted. And now we'd like to vote for the resolution as a whole. Supplementary item proposed by Nahima Landry, please. Who is for this resolution? Okay, thank you very much. Who is against the resolution? Abstentions? 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So tell me figures.
103, 7, 5.
Okay, 103 for, 7 against, 5 abstentions. Resolution adopted. Thank you very much. So with this, we've finished this part of our agenda with the supplementary items. Of course, we will continue. Just one housekeeping and it's a procedural, let's say, announcement. You know that for this year we'll have elections also, officers, and we need people who will oversight this process, so there are tellers. And I'd like to announce who will be tellers for this process. Margareta Kneller-Nellen from Switzerland, Peter Jensen from Denmark, Hermine Nagdalian from Armenia, and Peter Osuski from Slovak Republic. I think you will endorse the activities of our colleagues here. Thank you very much.
Please take all your belongings with you.
Okay. And also important thing, please take your belongings with you. So we will now announce break. We will then continue with different activities in our Parliamentary Assembly session. So thank you very much for great cooperation, dear colleagues.